So we've talked about students cheating on writing papers, but do teachers practice what they preach? Let's talk about it on Azimuth Podcast. I'm Kimberly McNabb, and with me is Barrett McNabb. So in Harris County, Texas, where we are, in a major teacher certification scandal, 5 individuals face felony charges after being accused of orchestrating a $1 million cheating scheme, Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg announced today. Ogg also said at least 2 of those who paid to obtain the fake certifications were charged with indecency with a child, as well as online solicitation of a minor.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. And, District DA Ogg is, she represents Harris County, and she's a Democrat. She's currently supporting Senator Ted Cruz in his reelection bid because she believes that Cruz is tough on crime. Well, so is she, and that is one of the reasons why she did not win her primary, is because she is tough on crime. And here's an example of where she is not going to get pushed around when there's felonies going on in teacher certification. So good for her.
But how dare a Democrat not toe the line?
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly why she didn't win her primary is they want to get a not tough on crime DA in the city and the county. So, but anyway, the prosecutors said longtime Booker T. Washington High School boys basketball coach Vincent Grayson led a cheating ring. And, in this, people were typically paid about $2,500 for help in having their test exams be fraudulently assisted, whether people would take the exam for them or even just not have to take the exam and just be forged. So teachers were paying $2,500 a pop in order to get into this fraudulent ring. But this is really, it's to obtain teachers' licenses and other certifications. And so approximately 20 teachers have come forward with confessions, but the investigation has shown as many as 400 people, 400 educators have illegally obtained teacher certifications in Texas since 2020. So it's the past 4 years through this cheating ring, and it netted the organizers about $1 million. Well, absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Well, the scheme involved conspirators taking and administering tests on behalf of aspiring certified teachers. The licenses likely help school employees get promotions, earn higher salaries, and keep their teaching jobs.
Yeah, because remember, I think some of these people had failed previously. Mm-hmm. And so this was kind of a last-ditch effort in order to keep their jobs. But one conspirator recruited and referred and refined estimated 90 teachers and collected about $267,000 in payments. Another conspirator who was paid over $188,000 for his role as a test taker was caught red-handed taking tests for 2 teachers at the same time. Wow. And he gave a full confession, which obviously lit that snowball into catching other people. But still, I mean, here he is. He's taking 2 exams at the same time for people who were not him.
Yeah, and he was supposed to be administrating it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, prosecutors said the investigation started in mid-2023 last year when the Texas Education Agency received a tip about testing irregularities at the Houston Training and Education Center. State education officials and the testing company Pearson noticed applicants who had previously failed their teacher certification exams were all of a sudden driving all the way from Dallas, Fort Worth, and other faraway areas, and Texas is a big state, right, just to take their test in Houston.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's an abnormality of all of a sudden Houston is the test-taking place to go to for people who have failed their exams, and then miraculously they pass. I mean, to go from Dallas-Fort Worth area, Metroplex, to Houston. It's
about 4.5 hour
drive.
About
4.5 hour drive. And there were people coming as far away as El Paso, which is coming up on an 8-hour, 9-hour drive in order to get there. Maybe even more than. It's to go from El Paso to the border of Texas that borders Louisiana is about 12 hours, 900 miles. So I mean, it's a hike. But here's the thing is we've seen this in the news a little bit, but it is not getting anywhere near the attention of the federal varsity blues investigation that occurred about 3 years ago, and it centered around rich Caucasian kids having a fixer get these kids into prominent universities, and it was via fixing SAT scores or ACT scores. I think some of it involved, manipulation of transcripts. I think some of it even involved getting scholarships. I believe one of the Hallmark moms, and she was on
Lori Loughlin?
Lori Loughlin. Her daughter, who's never been on a rowing crew in her life, all of a sudden became a varsity rowing crew. And they even had a photo shoot where she was sitting in a crew boat and, sent that in to try and get a scholarship and be on the crew team. So, it was a big deal. It lasted a bunch of news cycles for that, and a lot of these moms.
I think some of it was due
prison.
to the celebrity status of the moms.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. But here's kind of the heartburn that I have is this is not getting anywhere near the publicity. But let's go ahead and make sure that we're comparing these apples and apples, or in my opinion, I think they're apples and oranges, is the moms were paying to have their children get into these schools, of which they would then have to pay tuition to the schools. And some of them were state schools, some were private schools, but they were getting into the school in order to have the right and the privilege of paying tuition to those institutions. Where on the opposite side, we have these teachers who are not qualified to be teachers paying in order to get a job as a teacher, paying to have a promotion in their job to be a higher ranking teacher or administrator. And in this instance, the state and the city are paying those employees. So one, the college girls are getting in and they have to pay to be there, but here the Houston HISD teachers are cheating in order to get more money from the state. So the money is going the opposite directions in each of these.
Well, I would say this is worse because if you have a certified teacher, they teach, let's say, 20 kids a year. That's affecting 20 kids a year times however many years they teach.
Right, absolutely. And what's the quality of the education?
Per teacher that cheated, whereas a student, it's just one student maybe being at a school that they aren't smart enough to get into.
Yeah,
or too lazy to study for to get into.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because again, my heartburn is I see one is more damaging than the other. One, to your point, is a student that has a famous mom and she couldn't otherwise get into the university by herself, so she had these assistants with her test scores and things like that. But it's really only affecting that student,
that individual,
right?
And the school probably doesn't mind assisting because they know the celebrity can pay the full tuition.
Absolutely, and there's not going to be any reduced tuition or anything like that. But to your point, the educators here in Harris County in Houston, Texas, it's affecting the quality of education of the actual students. So it is magnified. Let's just say that the person is saying that they want a geometry certification, so they can be not just a math teacher, but they can be a geometry teacher, and they have no clue about geometry because they keep failing the exam. And so here they are, they get this extra bonus to be a specialized teacher, but they don't know geometry, and so they're trying to teach this to the kids, and the kids aren't learning geometry at the tail end of it either.
And they're in their more formidable years because this is 12th grade and below.
Right. Now look at it from the student perspective as well. So here we have students that are looking up to their mentors who upwards into, was it 400 potential or is it
yes,
900?
400.
400 potential teachers in one county. The students are looking up to these teachers to be mentors, and they see in order to get ahead, go ahead and cheat. Now, fast forward to Varsity Blues or go backwards to Varsity Blues, it's students that want to get into a university and they feel like they can cheat. So this pervasiveness of cheating in education, I think, is just throwing this, completely turning it upside down.
Well, no wonder we're just sinking lower and lower amongst international students around the world.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to South Korea, they have a national exam that they take every year in order to get into college. And the raison d'etre, the reason for being of any student is to prepare for and take this exam, and it's a hugely stressful event for them. They even reroute airplane traffic over the country to make sure that airplanes flying overhead don't create a distraction for the students that are taking this exam. It is a big deal. And so you can imagine the amount of money that parents spend in order to set their kids up for success, tutoring and things like that. And some students, obviously I don't think this is okay, but if they don't do well on that exam, they commit suicide because they feel their life is over. So here we have a culture of studying that hard in order to do the very best that you possibly can. And then we have educators who are supposed to be role models cheating and influencing the future education and the future morals of their students forever.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just highlighting different cultural aspects. Asian culture, especially South Korean culture, they emphasize working hard, studying hard. Your job is to be a good student. And here we're honoring meritocracy less and less.
Right.
And, not everybody reads to their kids that much. And, it just sends the message to the kid that, hey, it doesn't matter. Their friends don't study, so what does it matter? Yeah, it's a big cultural problem.
Yeah, well, my best friend from high school his family was from Taiwan. And he was the salutatorian of his high school graduating class. The only reason he wasn't the valedictorian is because he was also an athlete and played tennis all 4 years. And getting a 4.0 GPA in tennis actually lowered his GPA because he was in the honors program and the maxed out at 4.6 GPA. And so by getting a 4.0, it lowered his GPA. And instead of being the valedictorian, he was the salutatorian. But still, I asked him one time what motivated him, and this is when I was in high school, what motivated him to do so well in school. And he gave me a straight answer. He said, it's my duty to my family to do this and to be the absolute best that I possibly can. And so that is definitely not the mindset that these teachers are providing for their students in order to really, not cheat, to try your best to do what it is. And, the reason that there's these exams and these certifications is because if you are not good enough to do it, then you shouldn't be in front of students. And by violating the trust of not only the state of Texas and the county and the city, but by violating the sacred trust between parents and educators, I think this is just a huge problem. Now, we have not seen a big hubbub about this in the news. It's been in print news or digital news, but I haven't seen too many giant CNN covering doing massive coverage like they did for Varsity Blues. But it needs to happen. This needs to be brought to light. This needs to stop. And we saw it. We wanted to bring it to you. So thank you so much for listening to Azimuth Podcast. Please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all of the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in. Would you rather? Sometimes this game leads to which way is the worst way to die? Waterboarding, drowning, fire, old and alone, or buried alive? Well, how about this one? During surgery to have your organs removed. Let's talk about it on Azimuth Podcast. I'm Kimberly McNabb, and with me is Barrett McNabb.
Yeah, thanks, Kimberly. So when I saw the story that we're about to get to, it totally made me think of this George Carlin joke session that he has on being an organ donor. So let's take a quick look.
Organ donor programs. The thing that bothers me the most about it is they're run by the Motor Vehicle Bureau. I figure, hey, shit, you gotta wait on a line that long for a kidney. Fuck it, do without. It's the Motor Vehicle Bureau in most states who sends you the little card you're supposed to carry right next to your wallet, right next to your driver's license. In your wallet, little card, you're supposed to fill it out, and on it, you're supposed to list the organs you're willing to give in case you die. Oh, are these people out of their fucking minds or something? Do you honestly believe that if a paramedic finds that card on you in an automobile accident, he's going to try to save your life? Bullshit, he's looking for parts, man. Absolutely. Look, Dan, here's that lower intestine we've been looking for. Never mind the oxygen, this man's a donor. Bullshit, they want something of mine, they can have my rectum and my anus. That's all I'm giving. Take them and get out of here. Put them in your bag and get the fuck out of my life. That's all I'm giving. I don't want some guy poking around in me hoping I die. I want to live. I don't want to die. That's the whole secret of life. Not dying. I figured that shit out alone in 3rd grade. And don't be pulling any plugs on me either. Here's another bunch of macho asshole bullshit floating around this country. People talking about, oh, pull the plug on me. If I'm ever like that, if I'm comatose, if I'm like a vegetable, pull the plug on me. Fuck you! Leave my plug alone!
So we figured this would be appropriate for Halloween, but 3 years ago, a Kentucky man, T.J. Hoover, was deemed brain dead after an overdose. His family decided to take him off life support, and he was alive for 3 more days while his organs were tested because he was a registered organ donor. Now, during the walk to the operating room, Hoover's sister saw his eyes moving and was scoffed off by the medical staff as just being reflexes.
After he was alive for 3 days after pulling the plug, she was scoffed off.
Good God.
Well, Hoover was only about an hour into organ retrieval surgery when a doctor allegedly went to tell the family, well, he wasn't ready. He woke up. And they finally stopped the procedure because he was showing too many signs of life. An hour into surgery. Now, let's just go over the steps for the organ removal surgery.
Yeah, so again, these are all the things that he was going through when he woke up on the operating table. So the preparation, the donor is prepped and draped in a sterile environment. Extenuation, which means the blood is rapidly replaced with a preservation solution to lower the temperature of the organs. Then you go through the organ removal. The organs are extracted and placed in a sterile container on ice. Then the organs are typically removed in the following order: the heart, the lungs, the liver, the small bowel, the pancreas, and the kidneys. And if George Carlin, his rectum and his anus.
Well, I imagine he clearly, the doctor finally quit before removing the heart, but still to have these chemicals put into your organs to maintain the metabolism life of the cells of the organs so they could be transplanted, and these cooling agents and whatnot, stuff that's probably not meant to be in a living human being.
Oh yeah, this would just be an absolute nightmare, obviously, to be all of a sudden kind of wheeled and frozen in place, and your eyes are moving, and you're seeing your sister's concern. Hey, look, his eyes are open and he's looking at me, and
probably saw being wheeled into the
operating
room,
yeah.
like, oh.
And he's probably listening to the doctors talking about the steps they're going to go through and which organs they're going to yank out of him, and just as a miracle to all of a sudden show enough signs of life.
Finally convince people, stop!
Oh, maybe we should stop this because we're about to hack open a guy who's alive. It's crazy. But following this alleged organ retrieval gone wrong, this is back in 2021, his sister Donna Rohr was told to take her brother home to care for him and that he would not live very long. He's still alive today after 3 years. Now, the story has made the news because of witnesses coming forward and have now testified before the House Energy and Commerce Committee in September about what happened 3 years ago.
Well, I say this about anything. Anytime you ask why is this happening, I say follow the money.
Yeah.
That's usually the answer.
Right.
Follow the money or some sorts of power in it, but this is clearly about money. Organ procedure generates over $100,000 per major organ in either cost or revenue, depending on which side of the transaction you are. Transplant hospitals generally pay organ procurement organizations for each organ they transplant. Then the hospital performing the surgery then bills a payer, meaning insurance or Medicare, which we all love, they reject our things that we actually need. They bill the insurance companies for hundreds of thousands of dollars per surgery. A kidney transplant alone is $442,500. And if you combine that with a heart transplant, kidney heart transplant, it's $2.6 million that the health insurance or Medicare gets billed for. The more money moving around outside of public view, of course, there's greater potential for problems. Organ procurement organizations in at least 5 states are under active investigation for overbilling and fraud, and the offices and homes of 10 chief executive officers of the organ procurement organizations have been searched.
Now, of course, this could not be a solo instance of organ harvesting that's gone unalive patients. Greg Siegel also testified before the House Committee and Energy Committee, Commerce Committee, and he is the head of an advocacy group called Organize, seeking to reform the organ procurement process. Now, he alleged, without, now I just want to make sure he didn't provide any evidence of this, but he alleged that another OPO had given potential organ donors large doses of fentanyl to hasten their deaths. That's called murder. That's called murder. And, you know, I would think also, wouldn't that taint the organs?
The person that we're talking about, TJ, he had some sort of overdose himself.
Sure. Right.
So, I mean, I guess once they, get rid of any drug out of the organs they want to use, maybe some aren't viable depending on how hard the drug hit it.
Right.
Certain drugs interact with certain things more harshly. So I guess it just depends.
Yeah, but I mean, again, giving the fentanyl to someone so they're not dying quick enough. And so you're having to do that fentanyl. I mean, it just goes directly. George Carlin is such a mastermind. I miss him.
I would love to see him
today.
In the last 10 years. Yeah, the first cancel culture,
right.
And now the whole trans thing. I think he would just.
But he was always ahead of his time, predicting stuff, and here he goes.
He called this.
He called this straight on the nose.
Well, unfortunately, we're living in times where you really need to look, where's this headed? I mean,
right.
Other people may call you a conspiracy theorist, but what's the difference between truth and a conspiracy theory? I say 6 months.
Oh,
at most.
Yeah.
So what's not to say it's just organs? What about maybe using a whole body if you're brain dead? Well, per Fox News article from February of last year, a Norwegian professor suggested that brain-dead men and women should be kept alive and used as whole-body gestational surrogates.
Oh, my God.
According to a report published in the Journal of Theoretical Medicine and Bioethics. I think they're not understanding the last syllable of that one. Ethics.
Yeah.
So it seems plausible to them that some people would be prepared to consider donating their whole bodies for gestational purposes, just as some people donate their body parts for science.
Okay.
But, this is weirder than you may think. Notice how the title of the article included men.
Right.
It includes men. So the report's author is even more insane. The prospect of the male gestator could thus appease some feminists who might otherwise feel that the brain-dead gestation is a step too far in the objectification of women's reproductive functions. They're brain dead.
Right.
They're brain dead. I don't think they care. if you're only using the women. And where are you going to put, surrogate means someone carrying a baby that's not theirs in their uterus. Where are you going to put the fetus?
There's not really an organ to do that with because they're men, they're not women. But this just conjures up visions of the Matrix, where human beings are being used as batteries to power these, the future robots and stuff like that. And we're just row upon row upon row of pods where we're going to be growing babies inside.
It's very disturbing.
I mean, it's really super
I saw a
disturbing.
perfect hat that would fit this article. Instead of "Make America Great Again," make Orwellian fiction again.
Instead of making it real. That's good. I like that. Well, I remember a story. I honestly, it took place during the iPhone 4 time frame.
Yes, we're old.
Yeah, well, yeah. So the iPhone 4 time frame. So I guess you're looking at maybe 2010-ish time frame. But I remember there was a child in Thailand where he sold a kidney. He sold one of his kidneys in order to buy an iPhone 4. Later would he, I'm assuming, regret that we're at iPhone 16 and his iPhone 4 is
running out of body parts.
It's is completely worthless by now.
I don't have an anus anymore.
But he did that in order to be able to brag to all of his friends and family that he had an iPhone 4, and he sold one of his kidneys. So, part of, I think, the problem that we have as a society is this reliance on black market organs that are going all around. There's
I think that it's worse than that. We are lacking more and more value of life.
Right. I agree. But there's always been that the dark boogeyman story of going to Thailand or going to Southeast Asia and going out and meeting a girl and you get intoxicated, and then all of a sudden you wake up in a bathtub of ice with blood all stitched up and everything, and instructions on how to get to a hospital, and you're missing a kidney. Now, honestly, why wouldn't they just take both of them? Or why wouldn't they take why not just go ahead and do the whole thing?
Maybe they didn't want to be charged with murder.
I guess so, but you've heard that boogeyman story of tourists going to these places alone and then coming back with not all their body parts. But this is just absolutely crazy. But again, for this to be so close to Halloween, we wanted to release this episode or this segment on Halloween because this is such a scary story.
Mm-hmm. Our own horror segment.
Yeah, exactly. So we saw this. It hasn't gotten a lot of traction, so make sure you hit that like and subscribe button to get this pushed out. But thanks for tuning into Azimuth Podcast, and please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.
So we did our civic duty to stop the steal in Harris County, Texas, and we became poll watchers. Let's talk about it on Azimuth Podcast. I'm Barrett McNabb, and with me is Kimberly McNabb. So, Kimberly, why did we sign up to be poll watchers?
Well, I've heard, you hear about all these instances of ballots being extra stuffed into mail things, and these ballots catching on fire in Oregon. I mean, how insane is that?
Right.
All sorts of things. And I go, it's not just a matter of simply voting, getting the ballots out there, but who's watching what happens?
No, I agree. In fact, I just read, that there are some anomalies in voter registration in Pennsylvania where thousands of voter registration forms are turned in the same handwriting,
mm-hmm.
and the same handwriting in the same style and how they're printing and same pen, but the names of the people are not matching the Social Security numbers, and so there is a huge push. Even President Trump has said, look, there's voter fraud. This is voter registration fraud, not necessarily voter fraud, but still, it's tomato on that. But still, Pennsylvania is investigating it. But you're right, the ballot box fires. I mean, there are huge anomalies that are going on in this election, and we kind of wanted to make sure that we did our part to make sure it was fair for everybody.
Yep. Now, let's just recap how we got assigned, because you can't just show up on election day and say, hey, I want to be a poll watcher. First of all, you have to be registered to vote in the county where you want to go. And you can either go to the candidate and say, hey, I want to be a poll watcher on your behalf, or, hey, I want to be a poll watcher on behalf of the county, the GOP in your county. And we did it back in August.
Sure. Yeah.
Went online, said, hey, we want to volunteer to be poll watchers. And then in September, we went to the Secretary of State for Texas website and took a little online class, got a little certificate. And then we were emailed a link a few weeks later saying, hey, these are the shifts and locations where we're going to need poll watchers. And right. You have to do at least 3 shifts. Each, or if you do, and they're about 6.5 hours long, or if you do election day is all, 13 hours, depending on where you are, a shift. So it's quite a bit of a day. We did the early voting for poll watching.
Yeah, I mean, we went through all this. We're putting our certificates up there so you can see what they look like. But getting that appointment letter from the county GOP was pretty cool. And in getting our shifts. Now, we wanted to attempt to serve together, but in order to serve together, we were going to have to pick 6 shifts apiece, so it'd be 12 shifts.
And we have small children,
right? But we were able to. We were willing to do the 3 shifts each, so 6 total for our family, and we figured that was a good civic duty to do. So if you're liking this content, please hit that subscribe button and hit that like button so we can get this spread out to as many far and wide audiences that we possibly can. But now, unfortunately, we weren't able to get the same location.
Yes, closest to our house. So they sent Barrett the link first, and so Barrett was able to go ahead and select the location closest to our house. And then by the next day, the location closest to our house was no longer available, so I have to go downtown Houston and pay $12 per shift for parking.
Right.
And
So we got different locations. So talk to me about the staff that was at your location.
So my location downtown was about 900 voters per day, and it was the first week of early voting, and so it's about a fourth of the volume of your location. For instance, I have 2 scanners for the ballots to go into at my location. You have 4.
Right.
And so a smaller staff. The nighttime staff was very different from the morning staff. The nighttime staff is actually older than the morning staff. Some of the people in the early shift were younger than I am, surprisingly. I think all the people at your location have been doing it a long time. Mine have been doing it a long time. And it is funny how people seem to get to know each other and kind of talk about each other. I'm like, we're at the election. Like, can we not talk about each other?
Right.
But everybody seemed fairly professional.
Yeah, I would agree. So at my location, again, they were all in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s. I
would say yours are older.
Yeah, and they have been doing this for many election cycles, and so they knew each other, and they're just like grumpy old men and women, where to your point, they're just making fun of each other, and it's almost like an episode of Grumpy Old Men where they're fishing together and they're just talking smack. So it was a good time. I really enjoyed being part of the not the team, because wasn't a election clerk or a judge. I was the poll watcher, but still I was treated very well. And, I was welcomed in anytime I needed to look at something, which the law allows me to do, is to look at everything as long as I'm not interfering. And anytime I wanted to take a look at something, people got out of my way, the workers, for me to observe stuff. Now, it was kind of interesting. My judge, the primary judge of the polling location, just an hour before I showed up for my very first shift, went in an ambulance to the hospital, to the emergency room.
And I actually heard about it before Barrett did, even though I was at a completely separate location.
Yeah, which was just absolutely
It was a
crazy.
grapevine, works very well.
Yeah, exactly. So I was sworn in. So I went to the polling station, and at that point in time, I didn't have any badges or anything like that, and so I walked up to the the person who was administering kind of the line and said, I'm here to see the judge. And he said, we'll go right over there. And so I went and saw the judge and sat down, and I said, I'm a poll watcher, and I'm here to to get sworn in and show you my credentials. And so she said, okay, let me see your online training. So I gave her my certificate. I need to see your appointment orders. And so I gave her my appointment orders. And on there is a top section. We'll put another picture of that up there, but a top section you fill out in advance, and then you have to sign the orders at the bottom in the presence of the judge, and the judge countersigns and then gives you an oath of office. So it was, I got some instructions from the judge. That you're not allowed to talk to any of the voters in any way, shape, or form. You know that you're not going to be disruptive in any shape, or form. And so she gave me my little sticker for the poll watcher sticker to make me official, and sent me to work. And so that was kind of my introduction to the staff. You're able to talk to the election staff as long as you're not talking about the election or politics. Mm-hmm. You can't talk about that. But I made some small talk with some of my the people who are working in that polling location. How about you?
Yes, similar process to get in. I was really surprised by the number of statement of residences that needed to be collected. I would say it was at least 10% of the ballots. Came with about 10% of the ballots that came in. I'm like, good grief, a lot of moving going on.
And that's basically like if they came in and their address was where they actually were living is no longer correct on their driver's license, right?
Right, but they're still in the same county.
Right, yeah. So it was a green form. I'd have to say that we got a significant amount of those. A lot of moving going around, so close to the election. But yeah, so as the voters were coming in, and there's different types of ballots, and there's different types of additional forms that go in order to get the ballot. So you have the standard ballot, which you're once you're checked in to the e-poll system and verify with your voter ID here in Texas, they give you a blank piece of paper. It does have the Harris County clerk's initials on the back of it, and there was a point of friction from a number of voters at my location on why that initials were on the back of the form. There were some people that were mad. I guess there was some conspiracy theory going on, online. But still, you got that normal ballot. Walk up to a duo, which is controlled by a controller. How profound that lingo is. But the controllers, there's I believe it's 20. Is it 20 or 16 in a row? I think there was 16 in a row for my station, and the controller could to see which ones were active. And so the Duo is the actual voting machine, and you insert your piece of paper, and they give you a pen in order to
an access code
to turn on that machine. You do all your touchscreen choices, and you hit print. Your ballot is then printed, and it has a QR code, and it has all your selections. Quite a bit of people assumed that the ballot was their receipt of voting, and that the machine did the voting, and
they could walk out.
They
with
could
it.
walk
yeah,
out with
we had
it.
a large number my second day for some reason, seeming to want to walk out with it. And as a poll watcher, you're not allowed to talk to the voter. You're like.
Yeah, the same thing. A lot of
miming,
a lot of hand and arm signals. I got good at that to steer people. But yeah. So that's basically the Duo is the machine that creates your ballot, and then you have to take your ballot to what's called the scanner, and the scanner takes the ballot and scans it, and then the ballot goes into a bag, and it is you now have voted. And so the scanner, not only does it scan and store to the hard drive the results of your individual ballot, but also it's stored on a thumb drive, and then there's also the physical ballot. So there's three ways that your ballot are stored in case it needs to be accessed. But again, to your point, there were a number of people that thought that just by doing the touchscreen that they had voted and that the ballot was their receipt, and they were walking out with it. And there's an old gentleman who was leaving, and they're like, "Sir, where's your ballot?" And he goes, "Oh, it's in my pocket." And they said, "Well, we need to pull that out." And he had folded it into eighths. So it was all small and folded up, and we opened that thing up, and we went to the scanner, and we all kind of looked at each other like, I don't know if this is going to work, and it did. It took it, and so now I know folding it in eighths will still do it, but that's the normal way. When you check into that e-poll system, to your point, you had that green statement of residence. Now, what are some of the other types of ballots, Kimberly, that we kind of got educated on?
Well, there are limited ballots, like if you're coming from a neighboring county and you just can't get to where you're registered to vote, you can do a limited ballot, but not every polling location in Harris County anyway accepts it. So we had to turn another group of people to another spot, which fortunately for them was just across the street.
Yeah, for us, I was outside the downtown area, and so we had to use that location as well and send people. But the biggest thing on the limited ballot, like if people came in with their passport, they could vote limited ballot if they couldn't prove that they were residents of Texas. And effectively, instead of let's just talk about a normal ballot in Harris County. You had the president selection. You had a choice for senator. There were a number of choices for Congress people. You had judges. You had
I would say that was the majority of it, judges.
Judges. You had some state representatives. You had, and at the end, I think there was three bond measures.
Propositions. Right.
Yeah. But for those limited ballots, for example, the only question that would be on there using your federal ID would be the presidential selection, and you wouldn't be able to choose any of the other choices. And so that's why they call it a limited ballot. But again, we sent a number of people to locations, to that location so they could vote limited ballot. And there were some people that knew, well, can I vote limited ballot? Yes, you can. You got to go over here and go through some different hoops. Now, provisional ballots. What are those?
If a non-citizen is allowed to be here under the TPS program or whatever, they may be able to get a limited term driver's license, and then they can present that, and they're supposed to fill out a provisional ballot if they can't provide any sort of documentation, like a naturalization card showing they're an actual citizen. So, yeah, very leery. Didn't see any, but very scared about the limited term driver's licenses.
Yeah, I didn't see any of those either, but we had a lot of provisional ballots at my location. And one of the things that provisional ballots were done is if the person, for an example, there was a woman who moved from Florida to Texas and submitted a change of registration during the process. And for Texas, the deadline was October 7th in order to have your registration. And she admitted that she turned her registration change in on October 15th. And the judge was like, well, you've just told me that you submitted it, after the date. And she said, well, am I still registered? Can I do a limited ballot? And she said, yes. Now, there was an individual that had moved into the state and had made the deadline, but it hadn't updated in the state of Texas because he didn't provide the correct identification at the time. So he was able to vote provisionally, and so it's a normal ballot. But instead of going in the scanner, it goes into a box, and that's sealed up, and it goes in a special envelope, and it goes. The person has to submit it into the box, and then that person has 6 days to cure.
Yeah, to provide
the correct
any
information.
Needed documentation, like a naturalization card for limited term.
Right, and they have 6 days, and if they don't do it within 6 days,
it's not supposed to count.
The ballot is supposed to be destroyed. So there was a gentleman and his mother that were trying to vote, and he didn't have his registration card. Correction. He didn't have his current registration card, which was yellow. He had an older one, which was a number of years old, that was orange, and was trying to vote with that. Now, the story was that his mother threw away, and she was present, his mother threw away his registration card. But they went through all the steps. They used his VUD, his voter identification number, and looked it up, used his driver's license. They found him, but he had been purged from the rolls. He'd been purged from the rolls because he had not voted in a major election for multiple cycles. And in Texas, if you don't participate, they remove you from the rolls.
Use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it. And so now, so they kind of debunked his. Well, I got the yellow one and it got thrown away. No, he had not gotten one. So he said, "Well, can I vote provisionally?" And the judge was a very fair judge and said, "You can. I'll help you fill out all the paperwork, but you'll need to correct this and cure this in 6 days, and you don't have the ability to do that. Your vote is not going to count. I'm just telling you, it's not going to count. But I'll help you do this provisional ballot." And so he filled it out and put it in. But there's no way that he's going to be able to cure it because he is not registered in the state of Texas, and because he hadn't voted in a major election in a very long time.
Yeah. So, you did curbside voting too?
There was a lot
right?
of curbside voting. Yeah, so there was a lot of curbside voting. What it's supposed to be for is people who have disabilities, mobility issues, to be able to get out of their vehicle and wait in line and things like that. Now, if you're able to get out of your vehicle and you're disabled, they were having you go to the front of the line. But if you just can't get out of your vehicle, they have a cool like OtterBox / Pelican case thing to put one of those Uno Duos, the voting machines in, and they lock it up. They put in a piece of paper for you, and then it gets sealed so you can't take the piece of paper out. And it's like a big giant iPad case, and it's got 2 rails on either side. And in this particular instance, it's kind of interesting because we did a previous video that talked about that we were becoming poll watchers, And one of the negative comments about us was, "Well, you guys are worthless. You have the authority of a chaperone at a high school dance, and you're horrible people for wanting to be poll watchers." So here's an instance where being a poll watcher actually helped out. So there was a vehicle. It had I'm just telling it like it is. There was a Caucasian driver that was driving the vehicle and looked to be in their 20s, scruffy type facial hair. Next to the driver in the front passenger was an elderly Caucasian male. Behind him, presumably his wife, was an elderly Caucasian female, and then next to her in the back seat behind the driver was an African American man. And they did the e-poll system for the Caucasian man and woman, the elderly man and woman, and they both passed, and they both gave them the big giant iPad thing in the lockbox. What I noticed as I was watching that, the African-American man leaned over and started voting for the elderly Caucasian woman, just hitting the buttons for her, just going. I immediately I'm not allowed to interfere in that. I'm not allowed to talk to the candidates at all, but what I am allowed to do is go to the election clerk and say, that's against the law. And that's what I did. And 2 election clerks ran over and saw what was happening and started saying, whoa, stop. You guys have to stop. And they took the machines away, and they said, are you here to, they asked the African-American guy, are you here to assist them? And he said, yeah. And so they said, well, you didn't declare that you were going to assist them in voting, and so we need you to sign a oath of assistance register. And so they grabbed his ID and they made him fill out a register of that what he was doing. They made him take an oath that he was not a political operative or anything like that, and he did, and they gave the voting machines back to the elderly couple, and they were able to continue to vote. Now, here's the thing. If he tries that again, he's on the list. He's on a register, and to me it seems sketchy, but he did all the paperwork. But that's the one and only time that guy's going to get to do that. Because
so he's there's at least a paper trail.
There's a paper trail for this guy. But so that's an instance where, as a poll watcher, you're right, I couldn't physically do anything myself, but I was able to point it out to the election clerks, and they stopped it in a heartbeat in order to make sure that there was not illegal voting going on. So that's one where, one for the good guys in saving our election. But but on the by and by, there was a lot of curbside voting for us. There were a number of people that you could tell, in my opinion, that they were not disabled in any way, shape, or form.
They were just lazy.
They were lazy, and they didn't want to wait in line.
Kind of like most people at Walmart riding the little carts.
Yeah, they're riding the little carts. But I asked him, and I was like, come on, these guys are like in their 20s, and they're not getting out of their car. And he said, well, sadly, we're not allowed to ask them what their disability is. We just have to take them we just ask them, are you disabled? If they say yes, then that's the furthest that we can take that.
Well, did you notice any other interesting characters? Because, you go to the airport, yes, you're there to fly, but you can't help but notice other people. Yeah,
so there were a bunch of interesting people voting. I mean, honestly, everybody is different. I got it. Everybody is different. But you don't have to be that different. I mean, honestly, when I go and vote, both of us, we dress appropriately. We dress, we're doing our civic duty. We have appropriate clothes on. I'd say we dress nice. But there are people that definitely are just completely over the top. And I think they're doing it to try and either call attention to themselves or just be completely over the top, because none of them are showing up to any type of job in some of the outfits that I saw. Some people men wearing tutus and little alien, things like that.
People say Texas is red, but watching some of the people at the polling locations, you're like, is it? Is it really? Yeah, we got a bunch of little blueberries in a big giant sea of red. I saw a fat guy that kind of reminded me of that woodshop teacher that would dress with the big fake yabos and
the triple F breasts.
Yeah, and claiming, oh, they're natural. I'm a woman, blah blah. And then a couple weeks after, it's highlighted in the press, you see him walking around without them. There was a guy that kind of reminded me of that, but without the fake implants. Platinum blonde hair, overweight, like blob shaped white guy, probably 60, like. You could he wasn't fooling anybody. The pink tank top, He wasn't fooling anybody because under all that foundation and the pink lip gloss was this, gray scruff.
Right.
But I'm like, oh my gosh, and everyone's just trying to. And there were a couple of people who failed miserably to hide their expressions.
Right. Well, one of the things that I was kind of frustrated on, because we kind of wanted to serve together. Now, we didn't want to do 6 shifts each, but it would have been convenient to be at the same poll station. And when I signed up for my shifts, and then you tried to sign up for the same location, all the shifts were gone.
Yeah, so it claimed, and so we were really surprised when we showed up to our shifts, and we were like, where are the other poll watchers?
I didn't see a single Republican poll watcher during any of my shifts.
Because I read that there's supposed to be 2 from each party at any given time. And over 3 shifts, I saw one, and it was a guy coming in to replace me.
Right. So at least you had another GOP person that was
replacing I don't know if he was GOP or Democrat. I didn't ask.
Oh, okay. Well, so I had on my second shift, I had a poll watcher come in during my shift, and the shifts. So, I obviously can't be responsible for the Democrat shifts, right? But our shifts had specific times, and I picked the afternoon shifts, was 1 p.m. until close. And so the polls close at different times, and we're going to talk about that in bad sources of info, but close at different times. Most of the time they were closing at 7. Sometimes they were closed at 8 during my shifts. But still, I would have to wait. That's when the polls close. There's the machines print different certificates. Each of the machines are printing different things, and the judge has to tally things up. And so I stayed until the judge left. Mm-hmm. And by that time, it was the only 2 people were the judge and myself, and I escorted her to her car in the parking lot because it was late at night, sometimes at 9 o'clock at night, and it was dark. And so, but I stayed. The workers all left, but the judge had additional duties, and she was 81 years old. And so I felt kind of obligated to be there with her. One, I wanted to make sure that all the things that she was doing correctly, but then also for her safety. Unfortunately, as a poll watcher, we're not allowed to touch anything. We're not allowed to assist. We're not allowed to work at all. So didn't do that. But still, on my second day, an hour after my shift started, another poll watcher came in, and he was dressed like Jerry Garcia, long gray hair. He had like a straw Amish hat on and flowing. He had Jesus sandals on and stuff like that. And he signed in. And the only reason I knew that he was the Democrat poll watcher, because after the judge swore him in, and I had already been there for an hour, and again, it was my second shift, so I already knew everybody, but she looked at me and looked at the other poll watcher, and she said, "Y'all play nice now." And so that's how I knew that he was the Democrat poll watcher. So interestingly, he only stayed for about 2 hours, and then he left. And that was the only other poll watcher I saw at any of my shifts. Now, the significance of that is the Texas law says that you can't leave the polling station and come back in unless you are serving a shift of 5.5 hours. 5.5 hours. And so each of mine were 7+ hours. So anytime I wanted to take a break, I would have to go to the judge and I would have to ask permission to leave the polling site, and I would have to leave my note-taking material. Kimberly got us each a little notebook, and I took copious notes, to make sure that I was kind of remembering everything that was going on. But yeah, I'd have to leave my notebook in the presence of the judge, and then I could leave and take a quick break, eat a snack or drink some Gatorade or something, that just kind of sit down. And so I was doing that. But she even brought that rule up to me, that because he only worked 2 hours and he left, he wasn't going to be allowed back in. And so I think it was sad on his part that he did step out and then he couldn't come back in.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned bad sources of info.
Right.
So, some people are watching TikTok and saying, "Oh, I thought you guys open at 11. No, we open on noon on Saturdays or whatever." And so we advise that you either watch us. Of course, we're not local to you probably. So go to your government websites. Like for us, it would be the Harris County taxation website, or you could go to the Secretary of State website and find hours for your local polling location.
Yeah, there was some frustrations because people were coming in either before the polling station opened or coming in way after the polls closed, and they're like, "Well, I saw on TikTok or I saw on Instagram, my favorite influencer said, hey, make sure you get out and vote. The polls close at 7." And it turned out, or the polls closed at 8, and it turned out they closed at 7. And so there's not a disclaimer from that influencer that says, by the way, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, or by the way, I live in Fairfax, Virginia. And so they're just saying information, and people aren't realizing that, that's obviously, that video is going all over the world and people are going to listen to that. You need to look at your local information. Don't look at an influencer that is wherever they are. I mean, they could be in Alaska, they could be in Hawaii, but don't look at them for your voting information. Make sure, one, you listen to Azimuth podcast for any truthful information, but two, you go, as Kimberly said, to those your local election. Now, even the local television station made a mistake and broadcast that the polling location was going to be open at 11 on Sunday, and so people showed up. Turned out for Harris County, the polls didn't open until noon. Fort Bend County, which is a county that's directly next to Harris County, opened at 11. But so people came and they were all mad. They're like, "Well, the television told me to come here," and it turns out even the TV got it wrong. So again, check your the actual Harris County websites, or whatever county you're voting in, their websites, to find out the best information. But again, we had people showing up at weird times because they heard an influencer talk about it.
Yep. So any other interesting stories that happen at your location?
Yes, absolutely. So again, not allowed to take any video or audio recording.
Turn off your cell phones. We had to say that a lot. Or we couldn't say it.
We couldn't say it, but getting the hand and arm signals of you're not allowed to have your phone, and definitely if you flag somebody down, they'd do it. But an interesting story that I had, and again, you can't make this stuff up. I wish we were allowed to have video of it, but we had a guy vote, and he got his document, his piece of paper, and he started to go the wrong way to where he was going to go scan, and people, the election workers, election clerks were saying, "Hey, sir, you need to go this way, and he just kept going, and then all of a sudden he started ripping up his ballot, just ripping it up, into little teeny pieces, and the workers all went berserk, and they rushed over to him, and they're like, "Sir, stop doing that," and he is just mumbling something. The judge gets up and says, "Sir, what's going on?" And he said, I just, I fix this. And the judge's like, I can't fix it. You've ripped up your ballot. The only thing I'm going to be able to do is spoil your ballot and give you another one. But then he just got irate and he goes, either you fix this or I'm not voting. And the judge said, sir, you're intoxicated. I can smell liquor on your breath, and you're not supposed to be voting when you're not frame of right frame of mind, and so you need to leave. And so I talked to her. I said, what are you going to do? And said, well, I'm going to have to spoil this ballot, but he's checked in to the e-poll system, so he's already checked in, and I'm going to mark him as disruptive. And so that's it. He gave up his only shot.
Drink after.
Yeah, but I mean, to have this guy freak out and start ripping up his ballot, because again, you have not voted until your ballot that you've created at the voting machine actually goes through the scanner and gets put into the bag.
Follow through. Yeah, we had only one ballot misprint or jam, and so it printed like halfway, and of course he pulls it out and then he tries to go scan it, and the judge is, she sees what's happening, goes, sir, you can't, it's not done. And as soon as he saw her just flipped out, and she's like, no, sir, I'll just, spoil this ballot, and, we'll have to issue another one. And he's like, no, I'm just not voting. So he storms out, kind of looked like a Colonel West, the presidential candidate,
right.
Just kind of like a smaller, more hunched over one. And then he came back the next day, and as soon as I saw him, I walked to the back and let the judge know, hey, your favorite voter's back. And so, of course, he tried to check in. It showed that he had voted. And so then the election clerk walked to the back, and she said, okay, we're going to have to reset a system for him, and it's going to take 10 minutes. Let him know it's going to take 10 minutes, and it'll erase that he had even checked in. And so he left, came back about 2 hours later. I don't know what he's doing for 2 hours, but anyway, he came back, and I was just like, please let him vote. So he doesn't shout at the judge again. And fortunately, everything was fine after that. But you get it, you're erratic people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the things I got to experience that Kimberly didn't, and I've already told Kimberly this story, I actually got to experience a ballot bag changeover. So it turns out the ballot bags, and I'll start. So what I thought, you don't know what you don't know. What I thought was when you scanned that ballot through the scanner, that it was similar to a reverse printer. That in a normal printer you have a block of paper that you put in there, and it draws from that cartridge and prints your documents, and eventually the cartridge gets empty. So I thought it was like the inverse, that you scanned it and it went into a cartridge and the cartridge got replaced. Boy, was I wrong. That is not what happens. What happens is it gets scanned, it gets saved to the hard drive, goes to a thumb drive, but also there's a hole in this box, and it goes into a ballot bag, and it just fills up this ballot bag. And it turns out the ballot bags can hold approximately 3,200 ballots. And so at 3,000 ballots counted, because the machine has a counter that's visible, they go ahead and they call the county clerk to come to do to refresh that ballot bag. And so they did that. All four machines were at 3,068 count. So the two county clerks showed up, and they had the four replacement bags, and they're like it's like a Kevlar steel lined mesh bag. It's pretty hefty and big, and so the closest thing I could say that it'd be the size of like an aviator kit bag that you would store a parachute in. So it's pretty big. So we had to wait on a Harris County constable peace officer to come, and so we were waiting on that, and eventually they came, or he came, and he has a key to the top of the lockbox that the bags are stored in, that are continuously, being fed into, and the ballots dropping in. The judge has a side key, and they both insert their keys and then rotate, and they can open the box. And then, lo and behold, there's the ballot bag that's sitting there. And so similar to like an airplane, if you've flown on an airplane within the past couple of years, like if the pilot leaves the flight deck and wants to go to the bathroom or something like that, the flight attendants will get the drink cart and kind of block off access to the front of the cabin where the bathrooms are, and the flight attendants are making their drinks and stuff like that. And they stand there and they're pushing against it, and that's to prevent anybody from coming into the flight area while the pilot is in the bathroom. So similar to that, they physically blocked off two of the scanners so that they could have physical separation between voters and the bag. So they opened them up one at a time, and the constable closed the bag. They had this giant braided steel cable that connected the zippers, and then they had a serial numbered orange tag that went on there as a seal, so you couldn't open without cutting that orange tag. And they did that for all four of the scanners. Now the dolly they had was only they can only put 2 bags at a time, because again, these were really big bags. And I did ask, as I was looking, there was a county clerk that was there and saw my badge, and he got out of my way so I could go and look at what was going on. And like I said, everybody was extremely respectful. And so I asked the constable, I said, look, this is my first day of doing this, how do you take possession of the bags? And he said, no, I don't take, I'm just here for the top key and to provide security escort while they get loaded. But don't worry about it being your first day, because every day is everybody's first day during election season, because so many things are changing. So he's like, it's everybody, nobody knows what's going on. And so we all kind of laughed at that. So I went with the 2 clerks out to their pickup truck, and 2 of the bags were loaded, and one of the clerks stayed with the vehicle. I stayed as well, just to take notes. The other clerk went in and got the other 2 bags and came back out and loaded them, and I took note of the license plate numbers and everything, and they went off. But that was something that was pretty cool to see a ballot change out. And one of the biggest things about this whole civil service that we both did is I learned so much about the voting process. It was really cool, and I thanked everybody profusely all the time about how much I was learning. Now, if people were working and they were busy about doing something, I didn't bother them. I just watched. But when there was a lull, I'd ask questions because I just didn't want to get involved and have them lose their train of thought. But again, everybody was super friendly in asking or answering the questions, and I got to meet some lifelong friends, I think, out of it. Yeah, very nice. Now, Kimberly, one of the things that you mentioned was that the judge had some interesting information about the primary judge at my location. Yeah, she had some not nice things to say, but she did tell me about the medicalization of your judge before you even knew about it. Right. So I had heard that in some instances the precinct I was at may not have been running up to speed. Well, running as efficiently as it possibly could. But the judge that took over, the assistant judge that took over, consequently, who was a Republican, she turned everything around. Everybody was doing everything correctly all at the same time, and again, we were getting over close to 4,000 voters a day at my location, and so we were super busy. I think maybe 3 or 4 times more busy than your polling location. So everybody was moving with a purpose. Everybody went home with a light coat of sweat and stayed late, but I just cannot give more kudos to that precinct. It was clockwork, especially the amount of volume of voters that were coming through that location. So I want to give you guys a shout out. I'm not going to mention the polling location, but or names, but if you're watching this because you're able to Google us or whatever, kudos to you guys doing a great job, doing a great civil service yourself to make sure voting is fair, and I'm just pleased that we got to be part of this process. It was definitely eye-opening. And, we may do a couple of shorts on some of the other stories, but we don't want to make this video too long. But still, if you like content like this, please, please, please hit that like and subscribe button and share it with somebody. Share it with somebody you hate if they're a Dem and you want to
make them mad.
Make them mad and let them know what right looks like. Go ahead and do that. But yeah, hit that like button so we can get further distribution throughout the interwebs. And thank you so much for tuning in to Azimuth Podcast. Please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.